to the Pro Series podcast. My name is Victor Olatunji, and I'm a junior this year, studying computer science. And yeah, Gary, could you please take a minute to introduce yourself, and then Doris, you can follow.
You bet. Thanks, Victor, and it's great to be here. So my name is Gary O'Bannon. I am a professor here up at the Bloch School. I'm also in the HR field. I am the Director of Human Resources for Visit KC, which for some of you, that's the old Conventions and Visitors Bureau of Greater Kansas City. They changed the name around a little bit. So I'm still a practitioner in HR. I teach HR and leadership classes up here at the Bloch School and have been doing so since 2012. And I've had the pleasure to work with this young lady, Doris Rogers, on some Pro Series topics. And we thought it would be a good idea to have a podcast in between the formal sessions that we have with the students. So if you have not heard about the Pro Series, we encourage you to do some research because we would like for you to visit some of our sessions. And if you can't make the sessions, then listen and watch these future podcasts. So Doris, I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Gary. My name is Doris Rogers, and I am an HR person by background, primarily in healthcare. And right now I'm an independent consultant for an organization that I started, Authentic Leadership Development, where I do training and coaching. And I am working with Gary, as he said, on the Men of Character Academy facilitations and program. So
great to be.
Thank you, Doris and Gary. So today we're going to dive into some questions on the topic of lessons you've both learned the most throughout your professional journey. And I was able to get these with the help of a lot of my peers through conversation. And yeah, Doris, if you'd like to get us started.
Okay, thanks, Vic. I think the first one I would talk about is teach people how to treat you. It was one of the things my mother taught me early on, and she said, you have to tell people where your line is. And what I always think about is the golden rule and the platinum rule. So the golden rule is treat others as you would want to be treated. Well, I may want to be treated differently than you. So the platinum rule is treat others as they want to be treated. And I like that better because it takes into consideration what I want. And it makes it more about me as the individual.
Yeah, I like to add to that too. First of all, love the gold and the platinum rule. I think I'm going to steal that from you. All right.
Not mine.
Or steal that from your lineage. How about that? I think that's important too, because whether it's in the workplace or whether or not you're on the university campus, I think as humans, we are naturally conflict avoidance. And I think when sometimes people cross over our personal lines and invade our personal space, I think our tendency is to let it go. And while you don't have to be, real rude and you don't have to be overbearing if someone crosses that line, I do think it is important, as you say, Doris, to set that line sooner rather than later. Be professional, be kind, be respectful and all of those things. But you really do have to ensure that you protect yourself because, people run across a whole bunch of different people and they get very comfortable even when they don't know you. And I think it's important where if you're not a hugger, a lot of people, what do? They go ahead and let people hug them because I don't want to be rude, right? Or I don't want to offend anyone. But I think it's equally important to maybe consider that in how you respond. But it's important. If you're not a hugger and hugging makes you uncomfortable for whatever reason, you've got a right to feel uncomfortable, then you have to find a way to tell a person, well, you know what, why don't we do a handshake, or just say, if you're at a loss for words, I'm not comfortable, hugging people I don't know, no offense, but we can have a good conversation. But whatever way you decide to do it, it's important that you guard your personal space. So I like the gold and I love the platinum.
I think that's a great example. The other one that I would talk about, and you made me think about it, is everyone will not like you, and that's okay. They don't need to. And I had someone who I worked with, a coworker who I value her perspective. She told me that years ago because I said, what if people don't like me? And she said, Doris, you want people to respect you. That's what's important. And if you make friends and they happen to like you, that's a bonus. But as a leader, you aren't here to make friends.
Yeah, I was glad to see that one on your list. So, just a little bit of the backstory that Victor already knows, right? Is that Doris and I separately came up with a half a dozen what we thought we had learned in our careers. And that is one that I wish I would have thought about. So, I was glad it was on yours because, again, it still goes back to that discomfort we have sometimes in protecting our space and everyone wanting to be liked. And if a student is out there who has been in my class, they know that I have like a little 20-minute spiel that I'll go off on, talking about be less concerned about whether people like you or not, and be more concerned as to how you project yourself and as to how they treat you the way that you want to be treated. Because we get so wrapped up, particularly at a young age, in being liked and how we're viewed, and the whole social media thing is a whole nother podcast that we can do. But it has way too much influence on people's ability to be their true self and to really reach their maximum success, because you've got all these negative thoughts going in. Do people like me? Is what I'm wearing, up to date? And all these discussions that are in your brain that somehow we need to clear out so that we can really focus on what's important to us.
And I really like that comment. I think it is important to realize that everyone not liking you isn't necessarily a bad thing, because like you said, everyone is different, people like different things, but that respect piece is
absolutely
very important.
And back in my day when I was a youngster, your age, we used to always say, I don't care if you don't like me, you're not paying my bills. That was the one that we used to always say, right? Or you're not going home with me, but it's kind of a passage of youth. I think that we all have to get past that stage of wondering so much and having it impact our psychology, whether or not someone likes us. Now, the sad part is that I ran across people who are 40, 50 years old who unfortunately never get out of that stage. And my heart goes out to them, but it is really sad, is because you can see them holding themselves back because these ancillary things are a barrier to them, and it's stopping them from really being free so that they can really be as creative as they want, because they're too concerned about what other people are thinking about them. What you think about you and what those who care about you think about you is always number one. And we all always know that. We just need to be reminded of that. Right.
Well, and that can actually cause a lot of HR issues in the workplaces, people worrying about people liking them.
Yes. Yeah. And most HR issues are caused by these dynamics, right? And these relationships or the dysfunctional relationships. And it usually goes back to stuff that they told us in kindergarten and during grade school, but it keeps popping up. So I've got the third one, and that's mentors change everything. I'm going to keep this brief. We're trying to keep this to about 20 minutes, and I'm going to be the one to probably blow the timeline. But I have been fortunate enough to have two mentors, because I had two careers that ran concurrently. One was in the media, and then one was in HR. And they just ran the same parallels. One became part-time and the HR became full-time. But I was fortunate enough to have mentors in each one of my professions. And while they didn't make decisions for me, they helped me through all kinds of situations that I encountered on both jobs that my age and my background didn't prepare me for. But it always made me comfortable because I could always reach out to them for advice, ask them for options, ask them for advice, how they would handle it. And it made me appear to be much older than what my age was, because in fact, my brain was older, but it wasn't because of me. It was because I had these mentors who were double and a half my age, giving me all this wisdom that I could then filter and then use what fit for my particular situation. One just passed away. He was 94 years old. He passed away in April. My second mentor is 91.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to lunch with him tomorrow, and we still go to lunch together. So people will ask, well, how do you ask, for a mentor? There are so many people like Doris and myself who, if Victor, you call, or anybody calls, or you hit us up on LinkedIn and you make a connection with us through the Bloch School or whatever it may be, this podcast, and you say, hey, can we go grab coffee or tea, or can we hop on Zoom? Because I heard you guys are in HR and you've got a long career and I want to try to tap that. what would we say, Doris?
Absolutely.
We
When
would
do you want
say-
to go?
Yeah, we would say absolutely. It may not be that minute you ask. We might have to schedule it all in, but we would never tell you no, because legacy is important to us, right? I mean, at some point, we're not going to be here. So along the way, we want to pass on everything we know and then let you filter out what makes sense, what fits, what doesn't fit. But that's what life's about, is trying to leave those legacies. And you don't have to use labels. You don't have to say, I'm your mentor. The two mentors that I had, I don't even think we ever said anything about you're my mentor. It was just relationships, which is what you're going to see as a common theme through this podcast, is how important relationships are.
I think when I think about mentors, the best advice that I got from someone, and it was a previous boss, and he asked me if I had a mentor. And I said, well, I don't, but I was thinking I would find another Black woman. I wanted someone who I would be in the future.
Sure.
And he challenged me and said, I think you should look for someone outside of your demographic. And it was the best advice that he could have given me, because I've never had the opportunity to report to another Black woman. And who the people that became my mentor looked like my bosses. And that way I was able to get to know them. So it was excellent advice.
Hey, Vic, I got a question for you. So I have this conversation I had with my students, and I asked them whether or not the importance of mentors is something that they see as not critical, but important to their career journey. And I get a lot of blank stares, and I get, people don't have time, to talk to me that way or whatever. I mean, have you been involved in any conversations, or do you have a mentor, or what do you think about the whole concept of a mentor helping guide you through your career?
Yeah, so I personally think it is very important, not just career, but for, all areas of life.
Very true.
I'll definitely say I've had mentoring experiences in other areas prior to career. I do now have a mentor that's more career oriented. And I think a lot of fear people have, at least students, is kind of how those discussions go.
Yeah.
As far as the relationship with me and my current mentor, I found that, I guess, upon reaching out and having those conversations, the mentor has a lot of wisdom, a lot to share. So they can actually guide a lot of these conversations. They just want to see you take that first step, show curiosity.
That is so
and
true.
Desire. And something my mentor has told me a lot is, I know what I'm telling you, and you're free to use it however you want. But the key is you have to use it, or else at the end of the day, it's not useful. It's not implemented. Yeah,
and hopefully the listeners and the watchers caught on to one of your most important parts was you have to take that first step. That is critical. And if you're nervous, or if you're like, look, I don't know really how to do this, but I just know that I need some guidance, and I just want someone, to have something to bounce off of, just acknowledge, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm really nervous, but I'm glad that you met with me. We'll take it from there, because that's a natural feeling. A lot of times I think people feel as though these cognitive dissonant kind of feelings that they have inside of themselves, of nervousness, not knowing, how to approach certain things. I mean, we've all been there. And that's why mentors are good, because Doris and I have been there. We've had to go up to folks, who were these sage, folks, that had all the information, and we didn't know how to approach them, and we probably stumbled and stammered through it. But the payoff, that lasts seconds, maybe 2 minutes. After that, you're trying to build a lifelong, relationship, or whatever the span of the relationship is. Again, my two mentors, 94, 91, they were both mentors from the time they were 40. Yeah. So that tells you how long my relationship was with them. And it went less from a mentor as you get older to a friendship. Because it was born through the mentorship kind of uncomfortable part. But at the end of the day, I was just Gary, and that was Chuck, and that was Tom. I mean, labels don't matter. So I appreciate you, putting that out there, because that first step is really what people need to do.
I do like that relationship piece. Like you said, the titles and all that, sure, that could be perhaps the initial connection, but kind of as that grows and develops, it really is that relationship where you're just communicating and trying to see how to help each other does.
And again, small example, but the question was asked, do we want to be called Gary or Doris, or is it Professor O'Bannon, or is it, whatever? And what do we say? No, I'm Gary.
I'm Doris.
She's Doris. Labels, titles don't matter. The relationship and the conversation is what matters. You don't have to take every job. Is that me or is that you?
I think that's me.
Okay.
So I think the next one I was going to talk about, you don't have to take every job offer. And that was great advice for me, because I think I was in a situation of where I felt like, well, they want me and this is flattering. And of course I would accept that job, even if it wasn't the one I really wanted. And what ends up happening is you're taking a job that perhaps isn't the right one for you. Maybe you need to wait a little longer. And so you shouldn't feel like, I'm required to take something just because someone offers it. When you go in to talk with an employer, just like they're interviewing you, it's your time to interview them. And so you get to ask them some questions, and you should decide, is this the right thing for me?
And Javon's telling us we're already at 18 minutes. Can you believe that?
Yes.
So I'm going to do a real quick follow-up on you don't have to take every job. Equally important is you don't have to take every promotion, right? He won't mind me saying this, but Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver used to be the mayor of the city of Kansas City, Missouri, when I worked for the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And I remember him giving me a lesson where I thought I should have received a promotion earlier than I didn't. I didn't get it. I got it later, but I thought I should have got it earlier. And he said these words to me, and he says, Gary, he says, you have to let everything happen when it's supposed to happen. He said, your dream job could become your worst nightmare if you get it at the wrong time. So you can't just jump at a promotion, because we all need money. We all will always need another dollar. I don't care how many dollars you have, right? So we see the dollars, we see the promotion, and that's what drives our decision. But that's, again, if you have a good mentor, they'll kind of slow you down, have you think about the environment, think about the opportunity. Is this an opportunity where you can lift a ship higher than what it is? Or is the ship already up to this level where maybe you won't be able to make that much of an impact? I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why you decide to take a promotion or not. I fashion myself as a change agent, so I like it when things aren't like anywhere near perfect, because then I can go in there and then I can work with teams to fix stuff. If I have to maintain something, I'm going to be bored, because there's no problems here. And I'm going to be just like, why am I here? What's my value? Yeah, I can put some edges on some of these things. But you also need to look at who's your boss. Is that a person that's going to fit your personality? Does that person respect you? Or have they been giving you signs when you're at lower levels that they don't respect you? Or they're not really engaged with your career path? It's just a whole bunch of things that you have to consider other than money. Mm-hmm. So I was just going to maybe do a sister to you don't have to take every job. You don't have to take every promotion. Sideways moves sometimes put you further ahead than one that you might have taken earlier. And Doris and I can help people make those kind of decisions as well. I was going to do one more, which is just a relationship.
Yes, I think that's an important one.
And I think that's the theme of this first podcast is relationship, whether or not that's through, teaching people how to treat you, how you treat others. We talked about mentors, but relationships, every person you come across is a potential benefit to your life, and vice versa. Every person you meet, you're a potential benefit for their life. You don't know that unless you take the time, to actually get to know folks. Sometimes the path will be fork in the road, and you might stumble across some people where you don't want to know them any more than just a limited amount. But don't ignore any potential relationship for the value that it might bring. And I don't mean value and how it's necessarily going to benefit you all the time. Relationships, Doris and I have a great relationship, but I don't ask Doris for anything other than her collegiality here and vice versa. Our relationship works because we like each other, a lot of our comments, and we think the same. And sometimes I think differently. She gives me her perspective, but there's enrichment just in our dialogue and in our knowledge that we know each other. Nobody gets anything out of it, but friendship.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think relationships is our theme, and I think that's very important lesson to maybe take from this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with relationships, sometimes people think, well, that's difficult because I don't really care for that person, or perhaps they're very different from me, so I don't really want to get to know them. And you don't have to be best friends with people outside of work or even at work. Building a relationship is really just when, if something happens, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you have a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't know you, then it's, oh, well, she's this or she's that. If they know you and you've built a relationship, if something does happen, they go, I don't really see Gary that way, and that's not what my experience
Mm-hmm.
is. I think we need to talk to him. So relationships just take things a little further and, allow you to be able to get to know people in the workplace and work closely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess a slight follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
For people that are, let's say, a little more reserved, what are like some active steps and approaches they can take to, like you said, they don't have to be close relationships necessarily outside of work, but within the work environment, how could you foster some of those relationships practically?
Oh, that's a great
It
question,
really is.
Victor. I think it is getting to know people on, the assignment or your work. That is what you're there for. So when I want to get to know someone, we can talk more about what is your experience with this work? How can we help each other? What do you like about this work? Sharing ideas, sharing thoughts. I think when people hear the word relationship, they think about outside of work, or they think we have to again become friends. We don't have to be friends. We can work together, and it can be very collegial, and it's fine. And so that would be my advice: is just getting to know them on the basis of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I would say too that sometimes people have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We've all heard that phrase. And I know there's folks that would rather be in the room with the snake than to have to approach someone that they don't know and introduce themselves, right? But that's part of the reason why the Bloch School is here and you have universities and colleges, because they have student groups, they have classes, obviously. All those are opportunities for when people feel that angst. Is you look at all the opportunities you have just in one day as a Bloch School student to go up to someone that you don't know. And sometimes all you have to do is just say, hi, how are you doing? Hey, what other classes are you in? Like early and it just launches the conversation. Or sit next to them, a couple of days in a row, and that builds familiarity. I always put my students in teams. I know students are sick of being in teams, but get used to it. I mean, but the reason why we do that is because it facilitates people using different perspectives for their projects, but it also gives them the opportunity to build relationships. And I think that's part of the university's job. So sometimes you're never going to be comfortable walking up to someone and making that first introduction. There's no magic words. There's no magic bullet. Your stomach's still going to churn. You're still maybe going to break out in a slight sweat. There may not be a perfect resolution to that, but it gets easier the more you do it. And I think if you can just remember that mantra, is my life is going to be more enriched if I can just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because after a while, that discomfort isn't discomfort anymore. Now you might not run to it, but you can get through it. It's like giving presentations. I mean, people first part of the semester are shaking like leaves when they do a presentation. But if you have them do 2 or 3 of those during the semester, each one gets better. And then by the time they do it for the final project, they get through it. Might not love it, but they get through it because they survived, right? And they got better at it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you'll find, Victor, is that you aren't alone.
Yes, that's
as
true.
soon as you go up to someone, a lot of times you may not notice it, but they're going, whew, I'm glad somebody talked to me, or something. I'm glad someone smiled. Because they're just as nervous or just as much of an introvert or reserved person as the other. So
yeah. Take advantage of the campus opportunities and all the activities that are offered by the Bloch School and by the student groups. That's why they're there, right? So, and I know you're encouraging your colleagues to do the same thing, because look at your involvement here. I mean, we're glad you're here, because you're acting as a great host. And now I know Victor, and my life's better because I know Victor. So you can reach out to me whenever you want. And it may have been difficult. We didn't know each other before a month ago, right? But now I think you and I could be friends, and we can go out to coffee. We can all three go out to lunch or whatever it takes, because we're over that little, hey, who are you and why are you here? And so it's not as hard as we make it to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I really like that last point of my life is better because I know the other person, whether you need something from them or not.
Exactly.
That extra perspective you gain.
Exactly. Well, Victor, I want to thank you for being our host. I look forward to future hostings from you, because we don't want this to be a one-off. We think this is going to be a good series for individuals that we can drop in between our formal classroom projects. And Doris, always a pleasure. So for Gary O'Bannon, and I'll let you do your sign-off, Doris, and then we look forward to the next one.
Yes, thank you, Victor, for being brave enough to do the first one with us. And I hope that you all will join us when we do the facilitations, and that we get to know all of you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you, Doris and Gary. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. And also thank you to the Men of Character Academy and Bloch who sponsored this. And we look forward to seeing you in more Pro Series sessions.